Hey everybody, in this video I'm taking a look at Card Hunter, which is another of these free-to-play, card-based, turn-based strategy hybrid type games. And I know I just showed another one of these a few days ago, that being Cards and Castles, but I wanted to give this one at least equal time on the channel because having played both over the past few days, I actually feel like this might be the superior of the two games in several ways. And I'll try to touch specifically on why I think that's the case as I go through this. But I also do want to reiterate that I do think Cards and Castles is a pretty good game and definitely worth taking a look at, even though I think for my own personal taste and my own personal preference in terms of mechanical depth and feature set and such, I think Card Hunter may be the game that I stick with in the long term. Now, some of you might be thinking, why are you covering this game now? This game's came out on Steam back in June or July or something like that of this year, and has actually been around since 2013 in the form of a browser-based game. But the simple truth of the matter is, I was not aware of this game when it first came out, and I had a lot of other things going on at the time whenever it was originally released on Steam, and just never got around to checking it out. But of course, going and playing Cards and Castles the other day, it kind of got me thinking about this game and the fact that I had never really spent time with it, and it sort of incentivized me to circle back around and check it out. I also knew that this game had a pretty extensive tutorial, so I really wanted to wait to cover it until I had sufficient time to sit down, play through the tutorial, and really make sure I understood the mechanics of the game properly. So, having said all that, let's take a look at what actually makes this game different from other games of this type that try to hybridize trading card games and turn-based strategy games. So I think the main thing, or the most important difference between this and other such games, is the way itemization works. That being that you actually have characters in this game as opposed to decks of cards, and your character carries items as you would expect out of a traditional RPG. So you can see here I've got my character sheet with some basic stats and some item slots, and those items actually represent the cards that the character can use in combat. So for example, I have these boots, which if I right click on them, you can see these are the cards that are provided by said boots. For example, I also have these weapons, and these are the cards that are provided by said weapons. And so that's a very different kind of deck building mechanic than you would get out of most of these sorts of games. You know, usually you're getting individual cards that you sort of piecemeal together into a deck. But in this game, your character's inventory actually dictates the cards that show up in battle. And I think that's actually a really elegant and innovative way to address the whole issue with a lot of these games, which is that micromanaging a deck may not necessarily be the most fun thing for people to do in a game like this. And also, it kind of scratches that loot lust itch that you find in a lot of RPGs where you really just are trying to get the next best item. And in this particular case, you want that next best item because it literally impacts the cards that you're able to draw and use when playing the game. So I think this is a pretty clever and interesting mechanic, and I definitely wanted to show a little bit of it off in action, but I wanted to show this first so you guys could get some context for how this system actually works. Another thing, and this is a small thing, but I really do like it, is the way they do inventory management in this game. I think is very smart in the sense that when you're looking at your character sheet and you click on a slot, it'll automatically sort your inventory to show you items that can go into that slot. So in this case, these other pairs of boots and the cards associated with them. Or if I wanted to, say, look at my weapon options for this character, I could click on that and see what weapons I could potentially swap into these slots. Now, of course, items in this game have level restrictions associated with them, so you may or may not be able to use that item with the level character that you're trying to equip it with. But that's a pretty standard traditional RPG mechanic, and I don't think people would be too confused by that. Usually, if there's some sort of criteria for using an item, whether there's a level restriction or you need a particular item to make use of it, like in this particular case, we don't have enough power tokens to use this item. And also, because our guy here is only a level 1 and this is a level 7 item, we couldn't equip it even if we had said power tokens. So, having said all that, let's jump in and actually do a few rounds of combat so you guys can get a feel for what that's like. I'm actually not going to show too much of this game just because I feel like uh, it's pretty self-explanatory and it really does have an excellent tutorial. So what I want to do is maybe just jump in, knock out a couple battles real quick, and then kind of touch on a few other little wrinkles and mechanics that I think make it interesting. And then you guys can decide for yourselves whether or not this is something you want to check out. Alright, so as you can see here, we've got our level 1 guy, and this basically represents our area of potential movement based on the cards that we have drawn. The other thing we can do is right-click on any card at any time to get an up-close view of it. Now you see how this game typically works is you draw a card or two for each item that you're actually carrying. So in this case, I'm carrying 2 weapons, so I get the 2 item cards, or 1 or 2 item cards from each weapon, and then I have my boots, which generate the walk card, which lets me actually move. So I'll go ahead and play that walk card, and let's go ahead and move up closer to these enemies and see if we can get within striking distance. Oh yeah, here they come. They want a piece of me. So by mousing over this enemy, I can actually see how many hit points he has. In this case, he has 6. Now I have 2 attack cards here that do 3 damage at 1 range. So that's the 3 and the 1 that you see on the card here. 3 damage, 1 range. 3 damage, 1 or 2 range, I should say. So I also have a 5 damage, 1 range attack card. But since this guy has 6 hit points, I'm going to have to hit him twice anyway, so I might as well go ahead and use the one that's 1 range since he's standing right next to me. So you can see now he's down to 3, so I can play this other card and finish him off. And now this enemy has foolishly moved into my range, which means I can use this 5 attack on him. Now, I'm in a bit of a pickle at the moment because I've run out of cards to use and this guy is still in my face. But this is the point in the game where the turn basically ends. So as soon as you've played all of the cards available to you, that's considered the end of your turn. You can also prematurely end your turn if you say want to hold on to cards for the next round of play, but keep in mind that you can only carry 2 cards with you into the next round. So if you have more than 2, it's generally to your advantage to play the ones you have rather than having to discard them when the round ends. But since I was able to use everything this turn, we're going to get a full draw for next turn. And really all I need to do is finish this guy off, and since I have a 3-1 attack here and he's standing right next to me, that's going to be pretty easy to do. Hooray! And there was much rejoicing. So at the beginning and the end of each fight, you get a little bit of a story summation, which is kind of cool. It gives you a little bit of context for why you're doing what you're doing, and true RPG fans will definitely appreciate that little nod to the pen and paper roots of this game. But you'll notice now we get a chest that we can open up, And hopefully there'll be something awesome in there. So this is actually just strictly treasure-based loot. And you can see this sells for 2 gold to a vendor, which I'll show a little bit of that later. But we'll go ahead and take all our ill-gotten booty, I guess. Well, it wasn't necessarily ill-gotten. I mean, those things were monsters, and we were being pretty darn heroic. So I think we deserve that barrel of treasure, if you ask me. So let's go ahead and move on and do another battle and see if we can show a little bit more of the mechanics of the game. I think this may be the battle where blocking gets introduced, so we get to see that in action perhaps. So one kind of cool thing I can point out here is that this is where you start to see some terrain variation in the maps. So you notice like this square here is impassable terrain. Generally any square that has a thick border around it like this is going to be something that you can't pass through, that's meant to create a choke point in the level. So if I were to say, for example, move, I actually can't move far enough forward for you to see this, but what I can do is kind of block one of these paths so that it forces them to funnel to me in a particular direction. So let's say I go here. Let's see where these guys head. Yeah, well, they've decided to surround me anyway, so that's kind of a bummer, but I'm sure we'll find a way to persevere. So as you are no doubt aware by now, these guys have 6 health. So I'm going to try to focus my attention on one of them and burn them down this turn so I'm not getting hit from 3 different directions simultaneously. But the other thing I think I want to do is consider my orientation. So whichever guy I end up fighting, I'm going to be turning my back to other guys. So it kind of doesn't matter who I end up fighting against, but just for the sake of simplicity, let's go after this guy so I'm generally facing towards the other 2. So you see there, that guy actually tried to block, but his block card failed, so I was able to hit him anyway. And how the blocking cards in this game work is basically you have to have a dice roll that succeeds for the block to work. And block cards are played automatically in addition to armor cards, which also come up later. And as you might imagine, equipping items like shields and armor is what actually causes those armor cards to appear in your deck and in your hand, consequently. So what we want to do here is finish off this guy, and hopefully he doesn't have another block to potentially negate this damage. Oh, so that time the block was actually successful, so we actually did not finish him off, which is kind of a bummer, but we do have one more attack that we can try to play, and hopefully he doesn't have any more blocks. There we go. That's the stuff right there. So now we've managed to down an enemy, but we have exhausted all our cards, so we need to end our turn and get some more. Alright, so we do have movement available to us, but I don't really think that's nearly as important as putting the smackdown on these guys. So we really can pretty much go either way we want to go with this. It doesn't really matter who we attack first, but I will say I'm going to use the smaller attack first in case it does get blocked. So let's see what this guy's got. Alright, so we know he can't block, because if he could have, he would have. So we're going to use our other attack to finish him off. That's a bit of an overkill, but I'd rather have him down than have 2 guys be able to attack me. And we're out of cards once more, so we end the turn. Alright, so we are down to 8 health, but fortunately we drew some more attack cards, so we shouldn't have too much trouble finishing this guy off, assuming that at least one of them hits. So let's go ahead and use our small attack. Good, he wasn't able to block that, so we should be able to finish him off here. And of course, had that not worked, we would have been able to use the movement cards to try to get away from him while we drew more attack cards. But especially in an early scenario like this where things are pretty easy, not too much to fear there from enemies of that caliber. Hey, we leveled up. Hooray! So that opened up some new slots for us. Let's see if we have anything that can go into the shield slot. Oh yes, we do. We have several shields. So we can actually introduce some blocking into our ranks here. Let's sort these by their value. So I believe these are the most expensive, which makes sense because they actually, I'm not sure about that. I know every time you hit the $ here, it resorts them, but sometimes I get confused as to which are the most valuable and which are the least. I'm gonna say that these are probably the more valuable ones, just because their dice rolls are lower. So you see, like, these require only 3 to succeed in their blocking, whereas these require a 6 for 2 of them. So these are definitely the more valuable shields, and they also only require level 2. So we're going to go ahead and equip that and give ourselves the ability to block some attacks, which should come in handy and make us a little more durable moving forward. Now also we can open our chests, and we got some more treasure. Hooray! Let's go ahead and grab that. And I think what I'm going to do is head over to the vendor and try to sell some stuff. So let's go head over to the armory and give you a sense of how this works. So basically, anything you want to get rid of, you can drag into this blue box. So I've got some treasure shards here, and get rid of those. That'll get us some gold. We've got these treasure barrels I can get rid of. That'll give us some more gold. And unfortunately, at this point in the game, I haven't quite made it out of the tutorial zone, so I don't think I can actually sell any items yet. Let me see if it's gonna... Yeah, it's gonna warn me about that. So that's why my inventory is so full right now, because I haven't quite made it far enough into the game to actually be able to sell all this stuff. So one nice thing though is you notice it's real easy to sort your inventory, and I really appreciate those mechanics, because especially when you start to get a bunch of items, it makes it a lot easier to deal with all that stuff. And it even will do like convenience features like stacking items of the same type together and such. So it makes it real easy and clean to manage all of this, which I definitely appreciate. So the other major thing I wanted to talk about regarding this game, and the reason why I think it's such a winner for me personally, is the idea that it actually has cooperative play. So a lot of these sorts of games, they may have multiplayer components to them, but they don't necessarily let you play with other people. It's generally going to be like a one-on-one duel type situation, but this game actually is very firmly rooted in old school role-playing roots. So the whole idea of having a party and having that party consist of different people who are playing together fits very naturally into what this game is doing. So you can see here, if I go from this main screen, once you reach a certain point in the tutorial, this co-op button unlocks. And basically what that lets you do is to pull up your friends and invite people to your group, so that whenever you have a group of 2 or 3 friends, you can then go ahead and select a quest, and then that group as a whole will be taken to do that quest. And I just realized I may have misspoken there. So what I meant to say in that was 1 or 2 friends, because it seems as though the limit for play in this is 3. haven't actually been able to confirm that yet because I haven't had more than 2 friends online at the same time to try to play this with. But I believe, based on what I've seen in single player, that the limit on creating a party may be 3 characters. But actually, I can test that theory right now. Let me see. So I have this character in my party at the moment, but if I move over here, then I can actually take these other 3 characters that I have and see if I can add them to the party as well. So here I'll add my wizard, and I'll add my priest, which that would be a normal three party group there, a warrior, a wizard, and a priest. And yeah, it looks like I cannot add another character to that party. So what that basically means is, yes, you can play this cooperatively with up to 2 other people, but there seems to be a hard limit on it of 3 in the party, which, is not necessarily the worst thing ever. I mean, maybe a 4th player would be nice to have in some situations, but it really feels like the scale of the maps and the way the battles are tuned is kind of designed for 1 to 3 players, depending on the strength of those characters. So I can kind of understand why they would have, put this limit on the party size. In other words, it doesn't necessarily seem arbitrary to me. I think it's probably necessary based on the way the game is tuned. So, but you'll notice it's very easy to actually remove uh, characters from your party. So you can kind of mix and match them. And the thing that's interesting about that is, if you say wanted to play with some friends and they were putting together a party, you can literally pick any character you want to go in and take for cooperative play. So say, for example, a friend of mine was on and they had a warrior and another friend had a priest, and they're like, hey, we need a mage to complete this party. You could go ahead and select your mage, add it to your party, and as long as you only have 1 character in your party, that is viable for co-op. So this mage could go and join other players for their adventures and their missions, level up, gain items, do all the things they would normally do in single player, and then you can go ahead and remove him from the party and kind of keep him out of the game until you go to play with your friends the next time. And what this is really helpful for is, you get into those situations a lot of times in co-op games where you have a character that you've been playing with your friends, but then all of a sudden you end up playing the game some more and your character gets to be too high a level or get too awesome an item, and then all of a sudden it's no fun for you to play with your friends anymore because your characters are out of sync. This system basically lets you have a character that you only play with your friends, and then you can basically bench them, take them out of your party, and still go ahead and play with a full party in single player and not have to worry about getting out of sync with the other people you're playing with. So I definitely really appreciate that feature and think it's actually really awesome, and I wish more RPGs, and especially RPGs that have cooperative elements, had functionality like this, because I think it's pretty amazing the possibilities that this opens up and the ways that it makes the game so friendly to play, not just by yourself or not just with other people, but in both circumstances. So I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up for me for this video. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, be sure to hit that like button. If you'd like to see more from me in the future, be sure to hit subscribe. If you would like to see more of this game specifically, be sure to leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I will see you next time.